inclined to believe that it's of an extraterrestrial origin.
But because of the ridicule which was heaped upon us, and the great amount of censure, he considered it much better for the safety of his own skin and the safety of his own reputation to remain incognito.
Something is happening. More and more people around the globe are realizing that UFO sightings are real and they're not going away. We'll take you to one of the world's leading experts in UFOs, Jaime Maussan. We traveled to Mexico and interviewed Jaime and his staff. We saw unbelievable things. We'll take you inside and show you that incredible footage. Jose Escamillo will show us what might be hidden structures on the lunar surface. We'll take you into the lab with Dr. Roger Leir and Stephen Colbert and examine evidence, physical evidence of actual UFO encounters. We'll also show you samples that we took from a sphere that supposedly fell from space and crashed into a farmer's field. At the citizens' hearing on UFO disclosure in Washington, D.C., 6 congressmen got to hear unbelievable things that are actually happening in the skies over the earth.
UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead.
We have a space force. It's in existence.
We sat down with Stephen Bassett, the organizer of the conference, and discussed it with him.
There's an extraterrestrial presence from elsewhere engaging the planet Earth.
We also talked to Chris Putman, co-author of the best-selling book, Exo Vaticana. We sat down with Chris and asked him to explain what the Vatican relationship is with the extraterrestrial phenomena.
The data says that more people believe in ET than believe in God.
We also interviewed Dr. David Jacobs, who took us inside the alien abduction phenomena. Dr. Jacobs also weighs in on what he thinks the endgame might be to the alien abduction phenomenon.
If you don't believe UFOs are real, you will after watching what we're about to show you in the next few minutes. The facts are in, and UFOs are being seen all over the world. Not just the traditional silver disc, but all sizes and shapes. There has been an upsurge in the number of sightings worldwide. Since April 2013, there have been 900 to 1,000 UFO sightings reported every month. Colorful snake-like structures like this are routinely seen over Mexico at high altitudes. Other times, strange floating objects appear that seem to be able to change their shape. Cigar-shaped objects like this one have been seen all over the world, and some of them are huge. UFOs seem to have the ability to levitate without sound and with little to no effort. Yet the traditional silver disc is still around. These ships are photographed hanging low over the cities of the world. Sometimes there are so many objects coming out of the UFOs that some believe they may be depositing drones to spy on us. Hundreds of these spherical orbs have been seen overhead.
Dr. Leir, you were in Turkey in 2009, and you took what I believe is the most startling pictures of UFOs I've ever seen. Please tell us the backstory.
Well, we were in a small town called Kumburgos, and this was on the European coast, and we decided to film for a few days. So we rented a place and we spent the night there, and we filmed from about midnight till 4 something in the morning. And I believe that it was in 2009 also that Jaime Maussan from Mexico with his team was there also. We were out on kind of a platform that was close to the water, but above the level of the surrounding terrain, totally flat, good place to have a camera and to be able to look out over the ocean. There was a bright, very, very bright moon in the sky. The owner of the camera had taken a lot of UFO pictures before, so it was a 300 millimeter lens with an electronic doubler. That means we were able to get 600 power magnification. So to begin with, we started focusing on the moon, and this was a camera mounted on a tripod. We noticed that there was a small, what appeared to be a star below the moon, and noticed that this star was not a star. And we got really tight and close on the craft, and what we saw was absolutely mind-blowing, because it was the front of what appeared to be a disk, and 3 portals were apparent because they were lit from the light coming from the inside of the craft, whereas the craft itself was being lit by the moon. So in each portal you could actually see beings, and some of them was the typical black-eyed grays, but there were other beings that were there also. So in this central port you saw several beings, and then there was one on each side. Now we filmed that with a dog that was on the beach, who was just barking his head off because he was seeing the craft. He wasn't barking at the moon, and there was nothing else going on. So as long as we were filming, this dog was barking until we finally got the dog off the beach. But it lasted for quite some time. I don't remember the exact
4 or 5 hours at least.
Yeah, it was enough to actually see the craft change position. It turned, and then when it turned, we could see that it was not a saucer at all, but more of a boomerang-shaped craft that, you know, had sort of an oblong aft end to it. And then it would change back to the central position and then move slightly to the other position. The footage, first of all, was given to the University of Istanbul, which is a government-run university. And the result of the analysis was that this was a real documented sighting of a UFO craft, was not photoshopped, and the film was, or the video was not tampered with in any way, shape, or fashion.
We wanted to get to the bottom of where most UFO sightings occur regularly, and that is Mexico. To do that, LA, our resident expert, Richard Shaw, director, and Steve Colbert, the chief scientist at ANS Research, were invited to meet with Jaime Maussan, who has a television show in Mexico City. With 4 million viewers, Jaime's show about UFOs is the longest-running ongoing broadcast series in the world that focuses on UFOs. Jaime has a large staff that does nothing but investigate the phenomenon. They also are equipped to shoot UFOs and know where to go to look for them. People from all over the world routinely send their footage to Jaime.
It seems like the Mexico government isn't afraid to look at the UFO phenomena. Where back in the United States, there's no way they release any of this stuff to the public, and when they do, they always kind of joke it up and yuck it up and make fun of the phenomena. Where here, there's real research going on.
Well, I think the influence of television in this subject has really somehow affected the way the government looks at this phenomenon. I mean, we have presented so many evidences here. I mean, when the media really works as it should, and we are doing that to make this media work and inform people of what is happening, not just in Mexico, but around the world.
You just showed us a video of the Popocatépetl volcano where the UFO comes in front of the volcano, makes a right turn, and then descends into the volcano. At least appears like it descends. This is ongoing. This has been happening for years. Why do you think this is happening now?
I don't know. We found out in 1992, 91, 92, that this activity was very intense close to the Popocatépetl. And this happened when the volcano became active. When the volcano goes down and the activity is low, we don't have reports, we don't have sightings. We even know that the volcano is going to become active when people start calling us or sending us videos and we know something is going to happen there, and never fails. Back in 2004, I was called by the Secretary of Defense in Mexico to watch a video. A military airplane using a FLIR camera recorded 11 lights around the airplane. The military didn't know what they were. They used a FLIR camera to record these. This camera was provided by the government of the US. Both governments want to stop drugs. They called me and asked me to find out, and I said, well, this is unknown. This is an unknown object. I don't know what they are. Well, they gave me the video. The Secretary of Defense told me if somebody asked me who had given me this video, I should say that the Secretary of Defense. I think was very brave from him to do this.
So. Yes, absolutely.
And I presented in a press conference, and every single media went to that press conference, and that night, this video was presented everywhere in the world.
So we have squadrons of UFOs, which are small. Now in Russia, we're seeing motherships. Tell us about that.
Well, we see groups of lights, and sometimes you can see objects going away from this group of lights or going inside the group of lights. It's something that we don't know how to call it. Then we call it motherships because they come and go continuously.
Jaime, we learned recently that a sphere apparently exploded in a field, and when it did so, it killed a cow. And apparently you have that sphere. Tell us about that.
Well, the story is this. On the 30th of December 1994, at 7 o'clock in the morning, somebody heard a noise in the sky, and they looked, and an object was falling and was making a noise, you know, like hissing. And then when it struck the earth, the explosion killed a cow that was 100 yards away.
Oh my gosh.
I would think it weighs 20 or 30 pounds.
This is where we put the heat to try to melt it. Whoa. And we didn't do a thing to it.
This is it. We've got a little piece of the chip coming from. And here it goes.
Shove really good into the microscope. It's got some bare metal surfaces.
And there it is.
What do you think, Steve?
Awesome. Great.
That's fantastic.
Back from Mexico, both interior and exterior samples now cut from the sphere. The team converges at CL Labs in Los Angeles, where they have an electron microscope. The sample goes in, and the chamber is pumped down to a high vacuum. Lab tech Richard Matson focuses this gigantic device on the first sample, the one that Richard cut from the outside of the sphere. The microscope shows the striations in the titanium from the cutting disc, but the sample didn't otherwise prove that interesting. EDX analysis showed what we expected, an abundance of titanium.
Well, this is a picture of the interior of Jaime Maussan's sphere sample, and this was not damaged by heat, and this is a piece that Rick so laboriously cut off with a diamond Dremel disc. It took some time. It seemed to be a lot tougher than ordinary titanium, which makes sense since it's reinforced with carbon nanotubes, judging by the first sample I analyzed. And we're seeing some evidence of fibers here already. It's something sticking out that looks like a bundle of fibers of some kind.
Up on top, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks like fiber optics.
It does look like fiber optics.
Why don't you get a sample, pan up a little bit, and then let's get a sample. Let's get a picture right there, perhaps.
Wow, look at that.
Wow. I want the sample. I mean, a picture of the ends of those tubes or what's up there.
Look at the thickness of them.
Yeah.
They all seem very uniform, don't they? Yeah.
And that's only at 200 magnification, though.
They're about 30 or 40 microns wide. So they're definitely big bundles.
Oh my God! Look at that.
We've seen 10 micron wide bundles.
Now, something very destructive happened to it. It melted the metal itself. Whatever it was a very violent explosion, vaporized it. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think that there's a tremendous electromagnetic field around these objects when they're in flight, and there's a lot of energy in a magnetic field, and if something went wrong with the circuitry of the device, then it stands to reason that all that energy would be dumped into the metal, and somehow, judging from pictures of ones in flight, it looks like there's a connection between the plasma field and the device at the poles, especially at the north pole, the top pole of the device. And the top pole was where most of the energy got dumped. That was where the bigger hole was. This is not a normal titanium sample for sure. Why don't we pan up to the? Yeah, just take a picture right there too.
We know there are satellites and projects that have taken spheres up there, but nothing like this.
The AIAA created a report showing several types of hydrazine tanks, spherical in shape, used in the construction of space vehicles. In the usage column on describing one of these, it refers to an overwrap of resin-impregnated fiber. Could these be the fibers we saw under the microscope? Several other media releases recently published photos of similar spheres found all over the world. One even stated that the rocket fuel tank theory was the answer. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that Jaime's sphere fits the same description, since it is a different size and weight.
A university in Mexico analyzed it, and they couldn't find the origin of this. They also said that this was unknown to them. I believe everything with this sphere is pointing to that the source is not from this planet.
The reason I think it's aliens is because there's a whole network of these things surveilling the entire world. Jaime's photographed them docking in and out of these snake-like craft that are so high up that you can't see them from the ground, and being scattered by other UFOs.
So as Roger pointed out, Roger, as you were saying, why would you, in '94, why would you make a fuel tank that had this type of structure?
What would you need it for?
What would you need it for? Dr. Lear, we have a piece of drywall that came from a site where someone was abducted.
First we did an external examination of the property, and we found some bizarre magnetic field readings on the Gauss meter. One of the more intense readings was on the outside of the master bedroom, and usually assume if you have a frequent flyer, they're usually, if they're going to go at night,
A frequent flyer is someone who's abducted multiple times.
Multiple times. They're usually taken from the same spot. And we found, various anomalous electromagnetic readings. But in one case, we even found you could draw a line right down the center of the bed, where one half of the bed, which is just mattress material, was magnetized and the other half wasn't.
Wow.
So, the husband was being taken and the wife
That's astonishing.
looking at the window that was in the room. That part had a magnetic field which was similar to what was on the outside. So the very next thing we did was we shut the lights off in the room, and we used an ultraviolet light, and lo and behold, there were two little handprints right in that spot where we found that dense electromagnetic field on the wall. And these were two little four-fingered handprints. And he actually took that section of wall out and replaced it with another section. So that's what we have here in the lab today, this fluorescent material which is impregnated onto a piece of painted wallboard.
There's like a thumb and like little handprint.
Yeah, four-fingered handprints here and
specifically here. Right there.
They're very, very small.
I'm going to put my hand next to it, and you can see what we're looking at.
Yeah,
this is like 1, 2, and then 3, like that. So there's no little digit here. And that would be, you can see how small it is, like a child's handprint.
Yeah, very small, childlike handprint.
The gray aliens seem to have a liquid on their skin that fluoresces under ultraviolet light, this color, this yellow-green color.
Yes, and many of the people who have been taken aboard a ship that are handed a child this same fluorescent stain will come off on their arm. Evidently, it's something that might be on the skin.
Now let's get a sample of one of these. Well, I was hoping for some really exotic elements that would be like the smoking gun. That was
Right,
unusual,
right,
but
something.
For the human contamination, you'd get the chlorine and potassium along with.
So it's not whatever. Is it safe? I don't want to put words in your mouth. But is it safe to say that, in your opinion, this handprint was not created by a human being?
Yes.
Just a wide variety of opinions, but you have a high level, the demonologist for the city of Rome, a top level Monsignor Corrado Balducci, who goes on Italian television in 1998 and announces that the existence of these beings is a certainty we cannot doubt.
Non si può più pensare è vero, non è vero, sono veri o sono falsità, ci si crede o non ci si crede, no, oramai ci sono varie considerazioni che fanno dire con certezza che l'esistenza di questi esseri c'è. Non si può dubitare.
Just a typical UFO crowd. He would speak at these conferences and say that he was the representative to the Holy Mother Church of the Star Peoples. So, I mean, he was very unambiguous about his belief in them and that it was his job to be the liaison to the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. So if you just based your opinion on him, you would think they were head over heels believing in it and maybe even in contact with them.
I became very good friend of Balducci.
Wow, okay.
I went to his house,
Wow.
and he told me two very important things. He told me John Paul II tell everyone around him that when Corrado Balducci was on television, he should know that because he would stop anything to watch Balducci. And that gave him so much power inside the Vatican. And that is why he was able to move freely, because everybody knew that the Pope, John Paul II, was in favor of this phenomenon to speak openly about it.
He's the exorcist for the Diocese of Rome. He's a top-level demonologist. Monsignor is a title that has to be bestowed by the Pope. Pope John Paul made him a Monsignor. So he's a demonologist. He's the exorcist for the city of Rome, basically. He actually said that the alien contactee phenomenon is not demonic. It's not a case of entity attachment. And this is pretty much a direct quote.
In March 2006, I went to his house and I asked, okay, there is a year that has passed since the death of John Paul II. What is happening with the new Pope, with Benedict XVI? And he told me, you have to look carefully, because if by November the 30th, 2006, you see a change of the figure of Christ as a God of the earth to a God of the universe, we are in good track, Jaime. He told me that it happened, the figure of Christ was changed from an earthly God to a universal God. And you have to remember that in May 2008, then Jose Gabriel Funes, who was the astronomer of the Vatican, proclaimed that extraterrestrials were our brothers.
But then you have, say, Guy Cosmonalgo, one of the Jesuit astronomers who works for the VORG, the Vatican Observatory Research Group. Now, he would be very skeptical about his opinion. And he's also the same guy that has given interviews saying he would baptize an ET, no matter how many tentacles it has.
In October 2009, again in a congress inside the Vatican, in an astronomical congress, Jose Gabriel Funes, in the presence of Benedict XVI, talked again about the extraterrestrials are as our brothers. Then it was confirmed with the presence of the Pope there. Then we knew that Benedict XVI also was in favor of accepting this new reality. Okay, the extraterrestrials there, you have to remember, not here. The church is not saying they are extraterrestrials amongst us.
Okay.
They are there. They are in different planets. Okay, but it's the first step to accept then that they were able to come here.
When we talk about the UFO phenomenon and the sorts of reports that we have associated with extraterrestrials allegedly visiting Earth now, you know, we have all these abduction accounts, we have the contactee accounts, the UFO sightings. I don't believe that these are from other worlds. Now, could God have possibly created?
So what's your position with that? If they're not extraterrestrial, then how would you categorize them?
That these are demonic, fallen angel type
interdimensional beings,
interdimensional spiritual beings. You know, it's hard to categorize them precisely. Are they fallen angels? Are they demons?
And Jacques Vallée held to that position.
Well, he absolutely believed that they're interdimensional. He has what he calls the control grid hypothesis, and what he's talking about is that these sightings all tend to seem to focus on molding the belief structures of human society.
Chris's new book, fabulous book, Ex Vaticana, co-authored with Tom Horn, discussed the idea that the Vatican is ready to embrace an alien savior, which is just incredible. Speak to that, Chuck.
The Vatican is not even shy about admitting that they are actually preparing for anticipating receiving an alien visitor. What amazes me is not just that it's happening, but it's not something that is secret behind the curtain, so to speak. They're being quite open about it. And so that alone should cause us to stop and recalibrate some things. And so it's clear as you watch what they are doing, as you start watching the expectations. There's a strange guy that shows up in the literature that we call the Antichrist. It's a tragic label because the only guy that uses that term is John, and he uses it in a totally different way. But it has become the label that we put on this coming leader.
My perspective is looking at the ancient text and the prophecies, you know, that Jesus of Nazareth delivered, that I see, you know, in the Apocalypse written by the Apostle John. And, you know, there's a philosophy of history that runs through those texts. And, it kind of tells me what I should be looking for and what I should expect. Now, I don't see anything about benevolent space brothers coming to help me in my spiritual evolution in those predictions, but I do see a prediction of a deception that's unprecedented, that leads the whole world astray. Right. So I'm not saying, my religious belief structure, doesn't mention these beings, therefore they don't exist. That's not my argument. It's not an argument from silence. It's an argument from, what I do believe. And what I do believe tells me to expect this deceptive phenomenon to happen. I think that this alien mythos that's predominant in the culture offers the most explanatory scope for how that could happen. And so I think it's a live possibility. I think it's likely.
When I was making the film Celestial, I started looking for photography taken by Japan, India, and China, full-color photography. India, there's nothing available. If it is, it's in black and white. But China, when they first came back after doing a reconnaissance of the moon and filming it, just like the Clementine mission, they had a major press conference where the Chinese scientists of the space agency stood in front of a tapestry of the map of the moon and the north and south poles. As you can see, this is full color photography. However, when they released the same image to the public, this is what the public saw. It's gray. So they continue to perpetuate the lie that the moon is black and white or gray.
In 1969, Life magazine printed NASA pictures from both the Apollo 10 and 11 moon missions. In these photos, taken nearly 45 years ago, we can see the moon's true color. The surface appears light tan in many of the pictures. This is not yellowing of the paper, since white objects still appear white.
This is from Apollo 17, right. The last mission made to the moon, and it was December 1972. It was published the way it looks right now. It was a full color photo. So here's what it really looks like. This is the full color version where I did a contrast thing on it, and I did not airbrush this. This is totally the full color photograph as it really was filmed. And when you zoom in, you can now see details. And it's because this was a huge photo that I downloaded. All right, this is what you get at Lobachevsky, is this. It's a structure of some kind.
What the heck is that?
I downloaded this imagery, about 850 shots of this, back in 2009, February of 2009. When Moon Rising came out, where I featured this, a few months after that, NASA tampered with all the photography, and now it's all screwed up, man. All the good detailed photography of key areas has been tampered with, where you don't even see detail anymore. The colors are off, some has been turned tinted. It's all messed up. So unfortunately, they tampered with it afterwards. It's my fault. But I managed to download 850 photos of the 1.8 million digital photos that they took in 1994.
Jose, what is this crater and why is it luminescing like this? That's just very odd.
It's really strange. NASA scientists claim that it's just luminescent dirt, okay? But you can plainly see here, this thing is emitting a glow.
Mm-hmm. Light is emanating from it.
Yeah, violet, bluish,
yes.
White light.
Beautiful.
And it's incredibly beautiful, man. And it's always lit up like this. And it's been like that for years.
It seems to be luminescent. It seems to be giving off light, not reflecting light.
Yeah.
And it's bluish in color. What are your thoughts?
It's a crater called Aristarchus. Mm-hmm. It's a Greek name. And what's unusual about it is it's self-illuminating.
The idea that NASA is covering up clues is not something that Jose made up. In this panoramic photo of the moon taken from Apollo 15, we can see some sloppy Photoshop work, blacking out the shadows on one side of the lunar landscape. What is it we're not supposed to see?
This hearing is in order. We've got our witnesses ready.
I do hereby affirm.
I do hereby affirm
that I will tell the truth.
I will tell the truth
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth
to this committee today.
to this meeting today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There are huge issues here, huge issues. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know what's going on because they're part of it. It's not just an isolated thing. And so after confirming the contents of the book with a retired United States Air Force general, I accept the invitation of Victor Viggiani, who's over here somewhere, and his cohort Mike Bird to speak to a symposium at the University of Toronto. And I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally. Since then, I've learned a lot from many sources, including a number of the fantastic witnesses that we have heard these last 4 days. They were so outstanding, I was just really blown away with them, the amount of information that was available. And I appreciate every single one of them.
I, with my surgical team of medical specialists, performed 16 surgeries for the removal of foreign objects from those individuals who allege alien abduction. The individuals involved in this study all presented with no noted portal of entry for any of the objects that were removed. There was no visible scar formation, and there was no interruption of the integrity of the skin, even when examination was performed with a magnifying loupe, not only examining the area involved, but a large amount of the peripheral area. We used frequencies of ultraviolet light to detect fluorescence in the area of the object. About 60% presented with positive UV light fluorescence with color ranges from pink, green to yellow.
In June of 2001, President Bush came on scene on ABC News, and it was carried throughout the networks and in Popular Mechanics magazine. He had with him a general from the Air Force, and he was announcing that the general was going to be the head of a new military force called the Space Force. And they were going to build this force and also put a military base on the moon. Now, nobody questioned him on why, what was the purpose for that. But then September 11th comes around, the terrorist attack comes, this general is posted as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Space Force never comes about. The question I have still, why did he want to create a new military force for outer space unless there's a threat?
We have one. We have a space. We have a space force. It's in existence, and it's been written about extensively. It's there.
One more observation before I begin what I want to say, and that is that we spent quite a bit of time talking about the 66-year-old cadavers, and I was glad to have Linda this morning finally say that there are live ETs on Earth at this present time, and at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working with, first of all, he was scared out of his skin, but after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally they became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs in Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force and sharing technology with them. He wrote a book, incidentally, called Millennial Hospitality. There are 4 different versions, but Paula says that Millennial Hospitality number 2 is the best. I think that's the one I read, and it's a very interesting read if you want to sort of get inside the problem of what it's like to bump into these people floating across the terrain in the desert.
Not only does the Congress not know about this, but many people throughout the executive branch don't know about this. And so that this question of who is it that does know about this, or is there anybody that knows about this? And what we have heard over and over again in the testimony is that there are many pieces of evidence that indicate that this is known about, that there was an agency set up by President Truman shortly after the discovery of the crash site at Roswell in 1947 at the Majestic 12 group. And there's been clear testimony that I believe is credible, would be credible in a court of law, that this organization has, for various reasons, taken this issue out from under the oversight of our Congress, out from under the control of our executive branch, and has taken this into a realm of semi-private control. And what you'll notice is that as we come to the last panel of our week together here, the issue tends to turn more and more to that issue. What has happened? What has happened to our country when a national security state seems to have arisen to conceal certain types of information from our people, from our congressional representatives, even from some of our presidents? And so that question seems to be in front of us right now, attempting to understand the nature of this elite group. When you get past these procedural questions to the ultimate question of who are these beings? What are the implications for our human family if we are, in fact, at a point of some rather dramatic transition? And I believe that what we're going to be experiencing in the very near future has been foreshadowed, as I mentioned earlier, by the position that's being taken by the Catholic Church and the Vatican, that they are very clearly attempting to move into a position of utilizing the increasing discovery of more and more planets on which they are more and more confident that life is going to be discovered.
John Podesta was the key advisor to President Clinton during the Rockefeller Initiative to have Clinton release all the files in the government hands regarding this phenomena. He was a noted X-Files buff, watched all the shows. 2002, he called for the release of all those files. Like, you must have known what the impact of that might be. He called for the release again in 2003. And then President Obama appointed him the chair of his transition team. And of course, he was, by the way, when they released the logs of the visitors, I think it was the first 90 days of visitors, he was the most present visitor to the White House in the first 90 days. I think that President Obama is well aware there's an extraterrestrial presence. Admitted he was probably tipped off by John Podesta. But he can't do anything about it.
We're talking July 1947. This is what our government knew at that time. The Soviet Union was not going to be our friend. There was an iron curtain over Europe. Mm-hmm. They were building an atomic bomb. Mm-hmm. They had the hydrogen bomb secrets, as you could call them. They got them from us and our spies and their own scientists. They had their own German scientists, which they had captured.
Right, World War II, sure.
And many of them were dealing in the rocketry, and they were working on missiles, exactly like we were. And there was a substantial, I think, opinion within the high levels of the military in the United States that another war with the Soviet Union was not only likely, but probable. And obviously, it would be nuclear. And so that would be the war to end all wars, finally. That's a pretty big burden to deal with. How are we going to prepare for a possible war? How can we prevent a nuclear war? We don't know. It's 1947. In the middle of that circumstance, they have extraterrestrials to deal with. They don't know where they're from, probably. They don't know what their agenda is. They have actual technology from at least one version of these ETs. They don't know what it represents, what could be done with that. So is anybody going to blame them for saying, look, until we have a better sense of the Soviet situation and a better sense of what this ET thing is about, we just can't just reveal this to the American public? Mm-hmm. This needs to be a national security matter, fully classified, until we can deal with this. That is not an unreasonable decision.
There are those who are really pushing for disclosure. In other words, they want the governments of the world just to come clean and admit that this phenomenon is real. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? And you think this is anytime soon?
First of all, it is real. But secondly, I don't see disclosure in the classic sense happening for this reason. To disclose this dark presence that's been around literally for millennia would trip up the plans of too many world governments, whom I believe to be in league with these intruders. Mm-hmm. The Bible says that their business, that is the business of the intruders, is to be foul human government. And we find that in the Old Testament, the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece.
Does exactly that.
And we find it in the New Testament, principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, interacting with world powers. Now, these world powers are not going to disclose their connection with dark forces because it's to their advantage to keep this all a secret.
And I think that we have to keep open-minded on this, that we're still all trying to find an answer. And I don't think any of us have got anything conclusive yet. The end result, though, is they're back. And just like some people want to focus on what's out there, who is it and what's out there, it's not so much important what's out there, what's already here. who are we coming in contact with? What's their agenda? What do they want from us?
Is there anything so abhorrent, but yet known by a limited number of people in government, military, and intelligence? Limited could be a dozen, hundreds, even thousands. That should appropriately be withheld from the people of the world because it's just too hard to handle.
Could it be that the governments of the world are sort of in over their heads? In other words, they're dealing with these entities which are so much more powerful than they are, that they've lost control of really, of everything in some way.
L.A., I think there's more truth in that than probably either one of us knows. To have made a deal with the devil in the classic sense,
Literally,
is to find oneself in a trap. At first, it sounds like maybe you can win in this deal with the devil. Maybe you'll get something out of it that's worthwhile, and then later on you find out that there were parts of the deal you didn't know about in the beginning. And I think that the world governments, our government in particular, has gained a lot of technological savvy from reverse engineering. And we've read about this in I don't know how many books. But what was the price? The price was, I think, to give up certain control on a global basis. We don't know what that control involves, but it probably involves world economies, lines of force, power, human enslavement, and ultimately, in the plan of the Antichrist, who gains his power from on high, the control of the entire population.
We are seeing the groundwork laid for, official disclosure, but really a disclosure to the masses, okay? Officialdom has known about this for at least since the end of World War II. But the intensity, the density of sightings around the world situation at Powder Keg Point does tell me that we are approaching in the next year, maybe less, full disclosure of the quote-unquote alien presence, the deceivers.
It seems that whatever these beings are present themselves in whatever period of time they manifest. They present themselves in a way that the local populace at the time can understand.
It's like the Marian apparitions you get.
Sure.
We saw the one in Egypt at the Coptic Church on one of your previous things. It doesn't look like a Marian apparition to me. But what it is that whoever they are, try to put it in a way that people can accept it so they're not frightened of it. And when a UFO guy like me is looking at this, it doesn't look any different than the stuff I'm filming. It's popping in, and then you see it kind of collapse in on itself.
Right, I saw that, right,
and it's the same phenomena. And the people who've been in it for a long time realize that all this is associated phenomenon.
Now, when you say the same phenomena, what are you what do you believe the source of the phenomena is? Who's behind this?
I mean, being an ancient text guy, I have a tendency, even as a young ufologist, I always call it the Shining One, because that's how Lucifer is referred to in those texts. And when you see these things up close and when they're in full manifestation, the Shining One is exactly a great description of it. It's brightness that you can't describe. That type of.
There are crafts that are being seen everywhere. So where is this going? What is the end game here? What do you see happening, let's say, in the not too distant future?
I think that if we have to go by ancient texts, what they're saying is going to happen. What do we have out there that could change the paradigm so much that it could have the church folk and the very elect leave the churches?
Be deceived.
Yeah, the last big paradigm shift was Jesus. Let's face it, he changed the whole operation.
Right.
It has to be something that big, even bigger. The only thing we have sitting out there right now is the UFO alien stuff.
My God, there's going to be a crop circle there tomorrow morning. Oh, wow. There's another one. Oh my God. Oh my God. Come here. Oh, come here.
So guys like me are looking to that. I mean, when you're amongst that community, you think, hey, this stuff's going to pop any second. You know, you step away from it a little bit and gain perspective. You realize it is happening, it is moving forward at a fast rate. The funny thing is, a lot of people don't realize is that the early church fathers, say 40, 60 years out of Jesus' death, were all saying somewhere around 2012, something's going to happen. So we're in those times. Something's going to pop. As far as what it is, I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
But I have a feeling I'll be able to pick it off as soon as it comes around, because I'll know. What I believe is going to happen is that guys like me and probably like yourself are going to be the heretics, because we're going to be the holdouts saying, yeah, you guys need to second think what's going on here. You know, it's going to be that big, and we don't know what this is about. We don't know if it's good alien, bad alien, this is real, or it's fake, but we need to slow down and parse this out a little bit better.
Right. They're coming very soon, and if we don't say what we're saying now to warn people about them being nefarious, you know, bad guys, when it does happen, it's too late for us, those of us who see it as a deception, to come out and say, oh, don't believe them, it's a deception, even though they're curing cancer, giving us free energy, and making a world government that there's no war and that kind of stuff. If you come out then, it's sour grapes.
The official agenda is that they're trying to claim that they are our creators. They created us, now they're here to enhance us and help us go the next step level above and get us out of the mess that we're in. With all of our earthly affairs, various religious beliefs and everything. They're going to consolidate everything into one religion, one political system, one economic system.
Well, the whole UFO phenomenon, obviously, is one of the most difficult areas to research that I can imagine, because there's so much nonsense, so many deliberate hoaxes encountered, that you really have to clean away a lot of garbage to get at the real core information. But even when you do, you then discover that the UFOs are real in the sense that they show up on multiple radars simultaneously. They leave evidence behind like radiation or burnt ground. So they're tangible. They're not hallucinations, that sort of thing. And yet, obviously, the real problem we encounter is they violate physical laws. They go faster than the speed of sound without sonic booms. They make right-angle turns at extreme speeds. We have classified military studies that confirm that they are piloted by sentient beings. All these things just don't add up.
In my filer's files, I have access to essentially all of Peter Davenport's UFO reports, which run about 500 a month, and MUFON, Mutual UFO Networks reports, which run another 500 a month. Together, they're easily 1,000 UFOs a month. Although it often slacks down near Christmas time. Maybe people don't go out and look at them as much. But in any case, with the 1,000 UFO reports, we got, in round numbers, 50 UFO pictures and videos per month. And I try to put those in the files so that people see the latest information of what we're getting. And a lot of these are from, pilots, commercial airlines, even military personnel. In other words, people with high professional capability and used to seeing, you might say, other aircraft can tell the difference, trained observers.
One of the things I tell people all the time, everybody sees these craft in the sky all the time, everywhere around the world.
Sure.
And the one thing they forget to mention to themselves or think about is they're not just out there cruising around, they're working.
Yeah, they are.
They're on the job.
Yeah, they are.
We are in a position where we're going out to other planets, to Mars and so on. And there's indications that particularly the Soviets and us are very soon, if not already, have reached other planets outside our solar system. And certainly they've found a great deal of planets outside our solar system, many of which could house life of some kind. So it's possible that other life and other civilizations are out there. For example, in Numbers in the Bible, 9:17, it says, "Whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tent, after that the people of Israel set out, and in the place where the cloud settled down, there the people of Israel encamped." In other words, they followed the cloud, it took off, moved, the people followed, and it landed. Well, in my opinion, that does not sound like a cloud. It sounds like what we consider as UFOs. And I think there's, all through the Bible, time and time again, it has technology, it has history, it has many lessons other than just religion. And that if you look at it from that aspect, it's a wondrous book.
The team heads to Philadelphia, where they're about to meet with Dr. David Jacobs, foremost expert in the study of alien abductions. After almost 40 years of research, Dr. Jacobs has conducted over 1,000 hypnotic regressions on people that believe they have been abducted. Upstairs are files of individual cases dating back decades. Abductees often end up with an implant during their experience.
Dr. Jacobs, you've been researching the UFO/abduction, alien abduction phenomenon. What is the classic alien abduction? Just describe that to us, please.
A person is taken on board a UFO, and their clothes are removed. They have a series of procedures, both physical, mental, and reproductive, that are done to them. They have tasks to perform sometimes. They are shown certain things, sometimes for reasons that we're unclear about, but there's a pattern of these. And then they are taken back to their normal environment, where they have been missing for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And within seconds of being brought back, they forget what happened to them. If it's in a car, or if it's in a situation where they're doing something outside, they will have missing time experiences, that they're gone in real time. If it's at night and they're asleep and they're taken out then, sometimes they won't even know that they have been abducted, except they feel extremely tired in the morning after sleeping theoretically for 8 hours. The important thing to understand is that this can happen at virtually any time, except that there are certain parameters. People are abducted when they're missed the least. So they're not abducted during a work situation where people will be searching for them and something will be wrong. They're usually abducted at night, in the evening, when they're home watching television or driving somewhere where they'll arrive at late. A significant number of people are abducted when they're asleep, which has given rise to the sleep paralysis phenomenon.
How did we know this is not sleep paralysis?
Sleep paralysis adherents, advocates, don't have any knowledge of the abduction phenomenon. The abduction phenomenon goes from A to Z. There's an awful lot of things that happen. And what sleep paralysis does is it tries to identify A. I get a sense of a presence in my room.
Sure.
And I see a light or something like that. That's it. Then they have solved the abduction phenomenon, forgetting about B through Z that all abductees describe.
And B through Z is these people are physically taken.
They're physically missing from their normal environment.
Right.
Police have been called, search parties have been sent out, parents have searched for their children, children have searched for their parents. They're not there. They're simply not there. So the problem then becomes, how can you square sleep paralysis with the reality of it? And you can't. And why sleep paralysis people keep saying this is a mystery to me. If they would learn about the abduction phenomenon, the chances are they wouldn't keep saying that.
We hear bizarre stories from abductees which defy our physical universe as we know it. We hear that they're floated through picture windows, walls. How is that possible, do you think?
When I first discovered something that made no sense to me whatsoever, which was a person floating directly through a closed window.
Mm-hmm.
And they've also claimed that they floated through walls and through ceilings and,
Sure.
and so forth. When I first looked at this, I tested it. This woman said to me, "These beings are coming into the room, and I'm getting up and I'm moving towards the window, and I'm going through the window." I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Let me back you up just a little bit. Before you go through the window, do you open the window?" A sort of direct command.
Right.
This is in hypnosis. I'm doing this for a reason. "Do you open the window?" And she says, no, I don't open the window. I say, "Well, do these beings who are there, do they open the window?" "No, they don't open the window." I say, "Well, does the window in some way open by itself?" And I say, no, it doesn't open by itself. And she says, "I think I'm going right through the closed window."
Wow.
And she says to me, "Does anybody else ever report that?" Not knowing that everybody reports that. What you're looking at when people fly through windows and walls and ceilings and this and that is future physics.
A man contacted Watchers with the belief that he has an implant. LA is bringing him to Dr. Roger Lear's offices for x-rays and tests.
So we'll get you pictures today, and I'll take the old one that I got, and I'll take that to a radiologist. So that's the next step. And then have him, take a look and confirm that what we're seeing is there. And then he'll give me some estimate as to where it is, how close it is to the bone, approximate size. But we'll eventually wind up doing a CAT scan.
We take one anterior posterior, one of a medial oblique, like this, and then one lateral. We'll actually have you come across so that it's closest to the film. All right, I'm gonna center that up. Get your leg as close to that as possible. So it's right in here. Okay, so all I want you to do is just stand still. All right, 3, 2, 1. Good. 1.
You have an object in your leg, at least it appears so far that there's something in your leg. Tell us the backstory here. Where does this thing come from? Where do you remember seeing it, or feeling it, I should say?
Well, nobody really knows where it came from. It's I was having severe knee problems one time, and I had it x-rayed, and the doctors
How far
found out-
back is that go?
That's about 2005.
Okay.
And out of the blue, my legs started really hurting bad. Felt like a railroad spike being driven through my knee and my leg.
That would be painful.
It was put you on the floor pain.
Wow.
And the doctors took the x-rays, and they said there was nothing wrong with my knees, but they wanted to know what was with this object in my leg, and I had no idea where it came from. So we're here today x-raying it, and maybe we can get down to where this metal object came from.
Do you have any recollection in your childhood? Do you have anything what we would call missing time? In other words, did you ever see like a UFO, a ball of light? Were you knocked unconscious? Anything like that in your childhood?
Shorter type alien with the oval head and the big eyes, and that's all I remember, 3 of them, and I saw them in my bedroom, and of course you're frightened, you can't move, and actually I got up and I was going to do a football tackle, and once I started to hit them, they disappeared, and that was my contact with, I believe, Greys or some kind of aliens. But living in Nevada for a number of years, I started getting involved with the UFOs and the test center and things, and things seemed like there might be something out there for sure.
Was it the second time you went with the football tackle and they vanished?
I believe that the football tackle was originally
That's the
first
first
contact, and then after that I felt like I was being raised straight up into the atmosphere, you want to call it, to a speed where I can feel my nightgown being pulled.
And you were totally helpless at this point.
That's the only thing I remember being.
Total blackout.
I just remember that sensation going, man, I'm really going up fast, and I felt my clothes being
What about when you awakened?
I just came back, woke up that morning, and then That's all I remember.
And did you ever tell anybody about this?
Well, you just don't think of UFO stuff as a child. As an adult, you start putting the pieces together and you go, oh my God, this is very suspicious. What was happening?
All right, let's see what we got. What did you see in this one?
Right there. Now this
yeah.
So this is the lateral, and this is closest.
I see.
This would be closest to the X-ray.
Where are we looking? What are we looking at? So we're talking this circular object right in the middle?
Yep, right here.
So when we look at it and we peel that up, this one's really hard to see.
Yeah.
But I'll point it out to you. Give me just a second. Right there.
Huh.
This is it here.
Right there.
And this is pretty close to what we had before.
In the original X-ray?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, Hans, if we could rotate this once more and get it a little farther over that way.
I don't know how far or close to the bone it is to be able to do that. I can give it a try.
Want to do it? Okay.
Give it a shot.
Are you up to being irradiated again?
Sure, I don't need a flashlight at night now.
You'll be the glowing person of the...
No more glow sticks.
Right.
All right, so same deal. Just hold still. Just like that. So let's see how that works. It's pretty close to this thing. Wow. But it's still rotated. But it's a little clearer now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like right up. Clear.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's even a clip on there, I think.
So we're about to look at the results of the CAT scan then.
That's correct. CAT scan is essentially slices through a part. It's like taking a bologna and putting it in a meat slicer and just making slices. And so you're looking at each slice as you go farther down the line.
Wow.
This is the big bone in the leg, which is the tibia. This is the small bone in the leg, which is the fibula. And again, you can see that because of the size, this has been tremendously miniaturized. But by miniaturizing them, they can get, a lot of pictures on one sheet.
So the bottom line for us is we know that there's a metallic object in our patient,
Right.
for lack of a better words, knee.
And that we can tell from this that, again, the object is superficial, meaning close to the skin, and yet near a bone, which has the qualities of the other objects that we removed. This has nothing. I scratched it when I tried to mark it.
All right.
This is the object here, here, and
On top.
here.
Amazing.
This is a famous instrument called a stud finder.
Is that just picking up the density of the bone?
No, see?
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Right.
The same
Right
spot.
to the same spot, yeah.
Well, it takes off.
Same as the other leg. Now it's picking up in here. That's where the...
Yeah. What does that say?
It's like 6.
6 3/4, closer to 7.
7 right there. See, if you just tip it, it goes down.
If you move it away from that spot, does it change?
Yeah, it's going
Yeah.
down.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
This is, yeah, right here. That's That's about 9 milligauss, 10 milligauss, 10 milligauss right there. That's it, that's peaked at 10 milligauss. Well, here's a tiny object which is 6 millimeters in length, about the thickness of a pencil head, and it's putting out 7 milligauss. And here's a whole electronic camera that's putting out an
with a battery that's
10.
fully charged.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Crazy.
So now we just put the antenna close to the area of the object.
So this object is
strictly a radio wave in the FM band. Let's hold it right about there. That's an average number. It's reading 333.38604 gigahertz. Well, I did one episode with X-Files where I was a consultant behind the scenes, and it had to do with an abductee, and someone was taken and implanted, and I gave them the correct information which they used. In this episode of X-Files, it was pretty much the real thing.
I try to relieve, and we call it the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, symptoms, which everyone will experience after a traumatic event. I also work with people who've had terrible accidents, car accidents and so forth, or someone who's been raped, or someone who's been sexually abused. They all suffer from these PTSD symptoms. Well, alien abduction is no different, except that we're dealing with a subject that many people, including our government, does not recognize.
There's a story that's about 2,000 years old, again from ancient biblical texts, which talks about one guy sitting in jail. This is what's so cool about this stuff. He's sitting in jail. He's fettered to the wall. There's other prisoners around him. The jail cell is closed. A good guy, a good angelic being, comes through the wall. What does that sound like? Right? Comes through the wall, right? He's not sure whether he's asleep or awake. What does that sound? I mean, that's exactly what it says. I'm not sure whether I'm asleep or awake. It's like, how many abductees that say exactly the same thing? Then he looks over and his jailmates are switched off. Then the jail cell, his chains fall off by themselves. The jail cell opens and this angelic visitor ushers him out into the hallway where the Roman soldiers are fast asleep. And for a Roman soldier to fall fast asleep during his watch, you fell on your sword the next morning. You can't do that. He takes him outside. The huge prison doors open up by themselves. They go walking out together. He just vanishes. I mean, there's so many similarities there between what we see in the abduction phenomena, which of course I believe is malevolent, and this good being coming to him and freeing him from this horrible jail cell, which again fits the paradigm that what we're looking at perhaps are highly intelligent, superpowered, and angelic beings. Some are malevolent and very evil, with incredibly evil intentions, and other are very good and benevolent. And that's where I fall in on this stuff.
Now you threw more confusion in the mix. Something for me to think about, more things for me to think about. That's an incredible...
It's a neat story. I'll show you where that is. You can read it for yourself.
Okay, I've never heard that story. Yeah. But I have to deal with here and now.
Yeah, you do.
With, the more parallels, like you say, from ancient texts,
yes.
and then from... and it's the same. The way you feel, I'm thinking, what is going on around the world?
There are some who say that this whole thing is delusionary, that it's some sort of an illusion, that these things really aren't happening. I mean, how do you address that, especially in the wake of physical evidence, which is a preponderance of physical evidence? How would you address that?
Ellie, there are two ways to, I think, in a very clear-cut fashion, to document what's going on. Number one, our government, since at least 1953, has had very well-stated and well-funded programs to not only identify the intruders, but to work with them if possible. And I believe that there have been a number of documents that show us clearly that our government is working with this group of people from beyond. And there is profit in that for both sides. They profit by being able to have access to the human race. We profit by gaining technology from them, which they are very glad to give us, much in the manner of, say, a superior race landing on the shores of an inferior race and giving them little trinkets, little glass beads and bottles to try to make friends. That's what they're doing with our scientists. They're giving us pleasing little samples of high tech. In return for what? In return for the corruption of the human race, which they are accomplishing, by the way, at a rapid rate, in my opinion.
In your books, you describe a fear that you have of the future because of what you've discovered with this hybrid program. At the end of your book, I think it might be The Threat. You talk about that you had hope at one point. Now you're in sort of fear for your grandkids.
Despair.
Would you still hold to that paradigm?
Yeah, I'm still in the, more so now than ever before, now that we think the program has been initiated and that abductees have been describing helping hybrids move into their abodes. I do think that that their lives are going to be different than the lives that I envision for them, or that they envision for them in the future. And so I can't tell the future. I don't know what's going to happen. But when I look at the future, I don't like it.
You don't like it.
It's exactly the opposite of the way I started. When I first started examining UFOs, I was thrilled that this might be contact between two different civilizations. And it was the most exciting thing ever. And now it's exactly the opposite. This is the exploitation by one species of another species, and it's done for purposes that we don't understand why they're doing this, but it's kind of a replacement program almost. Eventually, I think we will see mainly hybrids in the society and not so many humans anymore.
Well, Dr. Jacobs now is basing his concerns about the future not on what happened 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago.
Now.
He is based on his interpretation of the contact abduction evidence.
Right.
All right. And he has concluded that one of the agendas, of the extraterrestrials may be colonization of some kind or another.
Right.
Okay. And
that seems to be a fair assessment.
Well, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, based on his research.
And it is, I would say it's not an unreasonable assessment. Do I share the same degree of concern that he has? No, I don't. Because I look at that same evidence and come up with a slightly different interpretation. But was it appropriate for David Jacobs to warn us of this? Absolutely. And should we give it consideration? Sure. Is the mainstream giving it consideration? No, of course
they don't care, right?
Does anybody deny that in the years, 1 or 2 years following, the formal acknowledgement of all world governments of the ET presence, that the interest in, the pursuit of, the attention paid to this issue will be unprecedented in all of history? How many documentaries, how many books, how many specials on TV, how many hearings in Congress, how many hearings in the General Assembly of the UN? Massive attention on this subject. How many questions will be asked? How much information will be released by governments under pressure from their citizens and from the media? It will be ETs 24/7 for 2 years without stop. And that the learning curve will be rather substantial. 2 years after disclosure, what we know as a civilization will be profoundly greater than it is now. And then, is it not unreasonable to conclude that the extraterrestrials at that point, 2 years after disclosure, would then execute formal open contact?
Ancient biblical texts warn us that in the last days, even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. We've heard from a variety of experts with different paradigms and different worldviews. But there's a common thread between all these men and women, and that is this. They all believe, as I do, that the UFO phenomena is real and is heading towards some sort of a climax. Dr. Jacobs looks to the future with despair. Stephen Bassett states that when ET shows up, it'll be ET 24/7, 365. Jacques Vallée, who's an author and perhaps one of the founding fathers of modern ufology, has stated in his best-selling book, Messengers of Deception, that these entities, wherever they're from and whoever they are, seem to lie and do so habitually. Flying men of Paracas. The flying men of Paracas here. The tapestry is at least 2,000 years old. And here's another shot. Flying men of Paracas, and he is licking the skull, a human skull. At least 2,000 years old, maybe older.